Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Welcome to The Ray Taylor Show, where I bring you the reviews on the latest movies and TV shows, as well as classic and foreign films. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and on this podcast, I will be talking about all things film and television. Whether you're looking for a new show to binge or want to know if that blockbuster is worth the trip to the theater, or if you just want to hear my thoughts on a classic or foreign film, I've got you covered. So join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for new episodes, and let's dive into the world of podcasting about movies and TV shows together. On today's episode, I am talking about the 2015 film Frankenstein versus the Mummy. You may be asking, why would you be reviewing this obscure horror movie that probably nobody's heard of? Why would you be doing that, Ray? And I would be telling you, person in my head that I'm having a one-way conversation with, it is because it is written and directed by Damien Leone. And that is the writer-director for the Terrifier franchise of films, which I had just reviewed. Terrifier 1, Terrifier 2. I reviewed the movie that the Art the Clown came from, the All Hallows Eve anthology film featuring Damien Leone's, two of Damien Leone's short films that feature Art the Clown, the origins of Art the Clown. So, since I finished reviewing those three films, and at the end of this week, I'm going to be ranking all of the films, short films and feature films that Damien Leone has directed. I figured might as well review the only other movie he's directed, this one being Frankenstein vs. the Mummy. He has directed, or he has, I should say, worked in visual effects, makeup, and those things in many other movies, but I wanted to at least get the final, just complete the collection of Damien Leone films. And I wanted to see the special effects, because that is one thing that you see, especially in Terrifier 2, the high-level practical effects that you get watching a Damien Leone film. So that is why I watched this film. This is a movie about the mummy of a cursed pharaoh and a reanimated corpse terrorizing a medical university. Only an Egyptologist and a college professor, the deranged Dr. Frankenstein, may be able to stop the creatures before it's too late. Going into this movie, I wasn't expecting much. 2015, early in his career, I saw his earlier films, Damien Leone's earlier films, kind of seen his progression and his constant improvement with each new film he comes out with, but knowing where he was at around this time, wasn't expecting much. However, I was looking forward to the practical effects, as I mentioned before. And I do like aspects of this movie. The premise is fun, it's interesting, the practical effects are good, but the movie isn't great. It's not a movie I would recommend. Right? If I was going to recommend Damien Leone film, I would say check out Terrifier 1. Don't expect a story. But if you're into practical effects, if you're into gory horror films, watch Terrifier 1 and then watch Terrifier 2. You'll be blown away at the improvements that he makes from Terrifier 1 to Terrifier 2. And then the rest of the stuff you can definitely watch, but it's earlier in his career, and I think he's constantly getting better as a director. So wouldn't necessarily recommend this one, but I'm glad I watched it. This movie, kind of cheesy. You have two professors. One studies ancient Egypt, which brings us the mummy, of course. The other studies medical philosophy, whatever that is. And, of course, he is Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, so he is obsessed with being God and being able to reanimate dead tissue, right? So kind of an interesting way to bring these two characters, the mummy and Frankenstein's monster, together in a movie, right? Via college. I don't know if these two departments would ever communicate with each other. Apparently they are a couple. I didn't really get that from watching it. They do go on a date. But regardless, kind of a cheesy movie, but interesting premise, right? a fun excuse for why there would be a versus of these two creatures. But because of that, it is two separate stories that are being told. And because of that, these stories involved with the monster, Frankenstein's monster, the other story involving the mummy, you kind of lose a little bit because, it's a 2-hour-long movie, which is kind of long, but it doesn't really give you enough setup for each of these stories. And I would also say that Damien Leone, up until Terrifier 2, is not somebody who is ever really that concerned with story. Definitely is able to do a good story, as Terrifier 2 is an example of, but in the majority of his previous films, the focus is primarily on cool kills, cool practical effects, gory kills, gory practical effects. Those are clearly the focus for Damien. And that's kind of what you get in this movie. And, the story, not that great. So he was able to combine those two stories in this, but just, not in a very satisfying way. And there's also things that happen between the characters that I don't buy, like things that happen after things are set, just like don't make sense, which I'll get into in spoilers. The acting is pretty bad in this. It's a low budget movie, so I can kind of overlook bad act. Like, there's a lot of things that you'll see in low budget independent films. Bad acting, not the best writing. They're definitely rough around the edges, and you're definitely getting a lot of that in this movie. So it's not, the acting isn't helped by this. The actors aren't necessarily improving this movie in any way. So not massive issues, but not helping the movie out either. And I did enjoy the practical effects in this movie, which was the main reason I wanted to watch this movie. I thought, although in a movie called Frankenstein versus the Mummy definitely implies that there's a fight, but because of the practical effects involved, and I'm sure also the low budget involved, the fight, the versus that happens isn't all that great. So not horrible. For a low budget, I think this is doing a lot of interesting things. I think it's showcasing a lot of potential for Damien Leone and what he's done, especially with the Terrifier franchise. But it's just like, as far as things that I could highlight that stand out as being great, the practical effects in that is kind of the only thing that really stands out, I would say. Not to say that there weren't great moments. There were a couple pretty great moments in this movie, but overall, not the greatest. But seeing how Damien Leone has grown with each new film up to Terrifier 2, like this, it makes sense that this movie is where it is. Let's take a quick break from this episode because I want to talk about, are you looking to add some unique and expressive artwork to your home, office, or wardrobe? Look no further than the Many Faces series by Ray Taylor. That's me. These abstract paintings on paper explore the endless possibilities of the human face, capturing unique expressions of emotion, mood, tone, and energy in just a few minimal features. Now you can bring these stunning and thought-provoking pieces into your own space with high-quality prints and t-shirts, featuring designs from the Many Faces series. Or take home a one-of-a-kind original piece for your collection. Don't miss out on this opportunity to add some original and expressive artwork to your home, office, or wardrobe. Head on over to InspiredDisorder.com to browse and purchase original artworks, prints, and t-shirts from the Many Faces series today. And now, back to the show. So, overall, I'm happy in general to see the growth that Damien has shown with his subsequent films after this one and with the Terrifier franchise, specifically Art the Clown. I think Art the Clown is such a good villain, so unique for a horror villain, and then to kind of lock that character down, lock down the practical gory effects, and then just kind of focus on improving the story, improving the storytelling. I think that's just going to allow him to get even better and better. But I do want to get into spoilers with this movie, just to talk about specifics. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you can watch. It's on Tubi. There's 2 versions of this. One says it came out in 2013, the other 2015. I watched both of them, at least the opening scene for both. They're both the same movie on Tubi. It seems one has closed captioning, the other doesn't. Other than that, I couldn't tell what the differences were. So if you do want to watch this, that is where at least I watched it at the time. Obviously, you can look up Just Watch and see where it's playing if this is in the future sometime. But I do want to get into spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, then this is your warning. But I don't think it would matter. I think you can listen to my spoilers and still go back and watch this if you're interested in it. But from here on out, you're warned. Character design, I think the Mummy's cool. Definitely seems like there's definitely scenes where it seems like it's a puppet. Practical effects, obviously not surprising. Also, at times, it seems like maybe there's an actor wearing makeup, prosthetics. Physical performance may make it seem more like puppetry. I know that in Terrifier 2, there's a very gory bedroom scene involving a mutilated corpse that is a part of that scene is a puppet, is a fake corpse that is being puppeteered by multiple people. So I know he's utilized puppetry in other things, and parts of the Mummy characters seem like they're puppets, but also seems like maybe it's just the physical performance of the actor portraying the Mummy. The Frankenstein monster kind of gives an Encino Man vibe in a weird way. He's naked, in great shape. Only the face has kind of sunken in features and looks like they're put together. So he's not like his entire body. It just seems like he got a new brain put in him, I guess. I don't know the extent of the body parts put together. I don't even know the original story of Frankenstein, how much of him was cobbled together of parts of human bodies. But for whatever reason, Encino vibes, I don't know why, because he's got long hair, wears a leather jacket at points, almost, more of a heavy metal vibe, but there's parts of it, especially like when he talks, that made me think Encino Man. I don't know why. Kind of like a naked hippie with an almost skeleton face is what he looks like, and eventually gets like a leather trench coat. And progressively, the Frankenstein monster starts to talk like he's intelligent, and like it almost just feels like, I think it's supposed to be him learning, but there's no reason why he would learn. Or maybe it's just him being able to access the person whose brain it was before, accessing their knowledge. Like it's slow to boot up the brain. But progressively, the monster is able to talk more clearly and clearly know more things, which is also kind of Encino Man-like. So, an interesting look to Frankenstein's monster, in shape, naked, hippie with leather trench coat. I don't know. Moments of this that didn't work. The 2 college professors, they go on a date. And there's this scene where he's telling her about how he found his mom after she killed himself. And that leads to them making out and then having sex, which makes no sense. Unless, like, the characters were just into that type of darkness, right? I could see, like, people who are obsessed with horror movies or tragedy or gothic stuff like that. There's definitely people I could see that maybe would get turned on from telling a story or hearing a story of somebody walking in on their mom being dead. Not a huge population of society, but I could see those types of people existing. I don't believe that either of these professors are those types of people, and doesn't make any sense why they would even start, like, seems like the worst time to start making out after telling somebody about you finding your mom dead. Doesn't make sense, and especially that leading to having sex, which is kind of just surprising to see a sex scene, because it doesn't seem like movies ever have sex scenes anymore. It seems like that was something that died out, sadly, something that died out in the 90s. Like, you so rarely see nudity in movies anymore, but the sex scene, you just never see this. Like, maybe the last one was Team America, World Police, and those were puppets having sex. But before there's so rarely sex scenes anymore. I don't know, just watching this really had like the 90s erotic thriller vibe of them, which would be a movie genre where I could see characters having sex after having that type of a discussion, but it wasn't set up in any way where I bought it at all. You have one of the female professor that's is familiar with the mummy aspect of the story, Naila. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. This actress, which I don't know if to blame the actress or the director, but her character is constantly flip-flopping between very extreme reactions to things, from being a confident badass to being helpless and crying. Will just flip wildly within a scene, which is like so off. It's like so inconsistent. Like, she's a badass telling the mummy, there's a scene where the mummy comes to life and the mummy wants her, right? For whatever reason, the mummy wants to kill her, but she somehow, for some reason, can speak mummy, whatever language it is, and she not only does she know this language, but just before she's about to get killed, decides to use it in a confident manner, as if she knew she had this. She just waited till the last minute, and then she controls the mummy to kill the other doctor. Very confident, very badass. In that scene, flip-flopping from being helpless and about to be killed by the mummy, then all of a sudden being a badass and telling the mummy to kill the doctor. Then you have, at the end, during the fight scene between the mummy and the Frankenstein, you have her crying helplessly on the ground, and then she gets a gun and is a badass shooting the chains off of her boyfriend or whatever. It's just like such wild flip-flopping with her character. Didn't work. There's a body parts dealer, obviously, because the Frankenstein's got to get the body parts, right? And when he finally he kills there's a scuffle because the dealer wants more. There's a scuffle, ends up dying, accidentally falls on a knife, right? So it doesn't intentionally kill him. But in that moment, the brain, in their scuffle, the brain he just purchased got squashed. So to replace that brain, he used the body parts dealer's brain to put into his monster, and flips the switch, electricity, come alive, whatever he says. And there's a scene where it doesn't work, right? And first off, he's he takes the brain from there's such a weird scene. He does an ugly cry when the brain gets mashed up. The brain he had got smashed up. Then he decides to take the brain from this other guy, and it's very first off, the cleanliness involved with this thing. He's clearly a doctor, a philosophical doctor, clearly not a practicing medical doctor, considering how absolutely unsanitary every single aspect of this this lab is where he's putting this monster together. But it's like also very sexual. The way he handles the brain. There's even a shot of him like pushing the plunger on a syringe so it like the syringe ejaculates whatever that shit was in the syringe. Like very kind of, it almost looks like he wants to kiss the brain before he puts it in. Very weird sexual erotic type of a scene while he's putting this monster together. Let's take a quick break right now to talk about, are you a fan of original artwork and live events? Look no further than the Many Faces series by Ray Taylor and the weekly live stream over at youtube.com/inspired disorder. This ongoing series explores the endless possibilities of the human face through abstract ink paintings on paper, capturing unique expressions of emotion, mood, tone, and energy in just a few minimal features. Join me every Thursday at 4:20 Pacific Time as I paint live. Follow the Many Faces series and discover the endless possibilities of the human face. Don't miss out on this opportunity to be part of the action and own a piece of original artwork by me, Ray Taylor. Head to youtube.com/inspired disorder every Thursday to catch the live stream, and visit inspireddisorder.com to browse and purchase the Many Faces artwork. And now, let's get back to the show. And then there's kind of a great, well, I guess I'll get to the great scene, but that was weird. Like kind of very like sexual undertones to him putting the pieces to this monster together. Then you have the mummy doctor, this older guy, which, like, he lures a young girl down for the mummy to kill, eat, whatever. Creepy. But there's a scene, there's a scuffle in there with him and the mummy. And he runs into a laptop that is open, that I think is her, Naila's laptop, and has a picture of her on the desktop when she's in, which I guess makes sense. When he ran into it, I initially thought that it was his laptop because he's the only one there and the laptop's open. Wouldn't really make sense that her laptop is open, but then again, it would really not make sense that her picture would be on his laptop. Either way, I don't know. It just another thing that kind of like stuck out. I was like, what is going on? For some reason, both of these monsters are obsessed with that woman, with the Naila. I don't really understand why. I think there's the reasoning for the mummy is she has the eye of Ra or whatever tattooed. I don't know if we ever even see that, but I think that there is like some kind of reasoning for the mummy wanting to be having this like fixation on her, but no real understanding why Frankenstein's monster does. Other than maybe because his creator has a thing. I don't know. But they're both after her for some reason. And he has before the old guy, like the old doctor guy with the mummy, the old guy's doing all the legwork for the mummy. And I think that is written in because the mummy can't really do much. Like he can't just walk around. So I get it makes sense that the old guy would be doing all the legwork for the mummy. And then there's the scene where she somehow knows the language. Let's see. Then there's a cool moment where after she tells the mummy to kill the doctor, right? She tells him to, or he kind of following through on the ritual or whatever, cuts his tongue out. So we get some cool practical effects. Cuts off his nose, then goes to, cut his junk off, and then crushes it. So there's some cool practical effects in that moment, despite the fact that her knowing the language was kind of out of nowhere. But there are some other cool moments in it. Right after killing the body parts dealer in self-defense, then kind of realizing what he's done, like, oh, I killed this guy, seeing the top of the head cut off and all these things. There's kind of a cool scene after the monster fails to reanimate, like this close-up, wide-angle scene of things kind of had a Sam Raimi vibe to it. Very short scene, but, kind of cool. I'm trying to pick out the positives. Definitely had some Sam Raimi vibes to it, which I'm not necessarily a big fan of Sam Raimi, but I haven't seen all of his films. I will do a watch through of his films to get his vibe more. Frankenstein killing the security guard and ripping his guts out was cool. Then tearing off the bottom of his job, like kind of bashing his head in and then tearing the bottom. Like, cool fight scene, kill scene of the Frankenstein and the security guard guy. Then there's the fight, which is starts very underwhelming. Kind of them slamming each other in like this subterranean place. There's pipes going through. It's just, kind of where I guess you would expect a fight to take place. They slam each other against the walls, and then at one point slam through a wall, and the hole that it leaves looks like almost a perfect circle, which is kind of cartoonish. But then they actually do fight, which I'm glad. I was like, oh, that was it. But a lot of it, the fight is close-ups. And the Mummy is a horrible match for this ripped Frankenstein's monster, right? The Mummy's, first off, he's all dried out and brittle. His arms are kind of effortlessly punched off. And then gets his heart torn out and squashed, then has his skull smashed. Looked cool, but the fight itself, despite being longer than I thought it would, which was better than what I thought it would, still kind of underwhelming because a lot of it, because you have like a guy wearing some makeup fighting a guy wearing far more prosthetics and costuming, or a puppet. I'm not 100% sure on if that's played by a puppeteer or an actual person. I think maybe a mixture of both. And it ends with the Dr. Frankenstein and Nahila in love, which doesn't make sense why they would be. She like finds out that he reanimated this monster. That doesn't bother her. I mean, I guess they're made for each other. They had sex after he opened up about finding his mom. I don't know. Just didn't like it. Didn't make any sense. I mean, they don't really have it didn't seem like they had a long history. Like, just all of a sudden they're having sex in a weird moment, and then all of a sudden they're in love at the end. I don't know. It's like this movie just telling you they're in love, but it doesn't make any sense. We haven't seen that kind of be fleshed out or whatever. But whatever. That's it for spoilers. The story was clearly not as thought out as the character design, practical effects, which are definitely the best part of this movie, are the special effects, the practical effects. The idea for the story is interesting. The realization of it, however, didn't really work. I am glad that I watched it just so I have seen at this point everything Damien Leone has directed. I've seen his progression, his growth as a director, and Sunday I'm going to rank all of his films, his full-length films as well as the short films, because he's only done, I think, 4 full-length films. So I'm including the short films as well in my top 5 rankings. So check that out, Top 5 Podcast on all podcast platforms and YouTube. If you want to see how I rank the Damien Leone films. And I'm excited to see what he does next, which is most likely going to be Terrifier, what sounds like Terrifier 3 and 4. He's got a story that is set and thinks that it should probably be split into 2 films. So I'm excited to see what happens with the Terrifier film. I think Art the Clown is an amazing horror villain, and just super excited with all of that. And happy that I got to see this, regardless of how much or little I actually enjoyed it. It wasn't a horrible time. It was okay. It was like a throwback vibe, 80s, 90s horror vibe to it. So either way, I thank you all for tuning into this episode of The Ray Taylor Show. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts and insights on Frankenstein versus the Mummy. Don't forget to tune in every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for more movie and TV show reviews. And join the conversation by leaving a comment or rating on your favorite podcast platform, or over on youtube.com/inspireddisorder if you are watching this. Until next time, enjoy the show.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.